In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build pages on your WordPress website with WPBakery. This is part 2 of Craylor Academy, my free series on building a WordPress website from start to finish. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet, go watch that video first and then come back to this video. In this series, we're using the Salient theme, which you can find linked here. And by the way, this series is brought to you by WP Engine, where you'll find the best WordPress hosting to power your website. Thanks to WP Engine for supporting the channel, and now let's get right into building our pages. So I'm here where I left off in part 1, and as you can see, I've got these beautiful page demos that I've imported from Salient. This is their architecture demo, and I can start editing pages. In order to do this, I'm going to go over to the WordPress dashboard, and I'm going to go to the Pages section in the sidebar and click All Pages. Now, there's 2 different ways we can edit a page using WPBakery. There's a front-end editor, and that's a more traditional what you see is what you get editor. Then there's the back-end wireframe editor. Now let's start by looking at the front-end editor. To do this, I'm just going to hover over the page I'd like to edit and click Edit with WPBakery Page Builder. It's going to load our front-end editor, and as you would expect, we can see our page, we can roll over different elements, and then I can just click the pencil icon on an element. I can make a change. I can click Save Changes, and then close. And it's going to redraw the element with the changes that we've made. Now, whenever you're editing a page, be sure to click the Update button in the top right corner. That's very important. I'll go ahead and update the changes that we made. We can see they've been updated. But what if you want to edit the website from the back end? Well, you can just click this back end editor button right here, and that's going to take us over to the wireframe editor. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're looking at this saying, Christian, why in the world would you want to edit your website this way? We just had this beautiful page editor and it seemed really straightforward. So why in the world would you use this? Well, I'm going to tell you why I actually prefer using the backend editor and why I use the backend editor 95% of the time. And that's because the backend editor allows you to easily understand rows and how the page is laid out. So what is a row? How does the layout work? Let's get into that. Now let's start to dig through how this page is set up. You can see we have this big gray box right here, and this is called a row. It's sort of like a section of a page. A row can contain inner rows within it. A row can contain columns. And right here, this big box is one row, and then we have one column within the row. So I could change this to be 2 columns. Now I have a row that's got 2 columns right here. And right here, this white box is actually a row within a row referred to as an inner row, or you could think of it as a nested row. So I could drag this inner row around into another outer row, or I could change the outer row to be back to just 1 column. So then I can drag one of these on top of the other. Another thing I can do with an inner row is make columns within a column. So I can take this inner row and I can make it 2 inner columns. So then we can really mess around with this and have like a split left-right configuration. You can see we have an inner row right here that currently has nothing in it because we just dragged the element up to this section of this inner row. So this really gives us a good idea of the row system, and that's why I like the back-end editor. It gives a clear understanding of how the page layout works, and then you can start to see as you scroll down, oh, I see what they're doing. Right here we have a row that's got 2 columns, 1 column right here, 1 column right here, and then within this column, we have several inner rows. We have an inner row right here that has 3 columns. You can see by hovering over this, it's 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. That's going to make up the width of the row that it's in, and the row that it's in is 1/2 of the total page width, as you can see from here. I know it sounds like a lot of math and numbers, but it's actually pretty straightforward and makes sense, especially when you look at the backend editor. Now, once you have an understanding of rows and layouts, you can start to get into editing your page. And in WPBakery, this all happens with the pencil icon. You're gonna notice a pattern. We see pencil icons everywhere. There's a pencil icon for the row. If we click that, we have our row settings. And there's all sorts of options within here for padding, margin, spacing, background. You can see this row has a background image set, color overlay. I'm not going to go through all these tabs, but your row settings are edited within that pencil icon. We can click the pencil icon for the column within the row, and we see our column settings. We can also do that for the inner row. The inner row has its own inner row settings. And then finally, we can also do that for actual elements. So for this split line heading, I click the pencil icon, I can edit the text of the heading. I'll fix that typo that I created by editing it in the past. I'll save those changes. But everything gets modified within the pencil icon. So if you're wondering, how do I make a change to a page? How do I make a change to an element? It all starts with the pencil icon. Now you might be wondering, Christian, which pencil icon do I click? It's not always obvious. I mean, if you're trying to change text on an element, then it is pretty obvious. You know, if you want to change the split line heading that says iconic architecture expertly developed, well, you can see that text right here on the screen. Click your pencil icon, change your text, save your changes. But it's not always super straightforward, because in the case of our page demo, you might be wondering where certain things are, like where is this background image? Where's that setting? It's actually in the row. So you can see this entire row, this big gray box is a section. The background image is applying to the entire row. So naturally our background image is on the row. We hit the pencil icon for the row. We go to background, we can see our background image here, we can change that out if we'd like, and we also can go to color overlay, and we can see exactly what's adding that darkened or tinted effect to our image. We could actually play with our color sum if we wanted and change that tint color. So if I save these changes and I update the page, now you can see that tint has been updated. Now I'm going to take some time to talk about padding and margin. These are two things you absolutely need to understand in web design because they are so common. You're going to be using them over and over. So what is padding and margin? Well, both of them are basically just empty space on a page between elements. But how does it actually work? What does it actually look like? What's the difference? So I've got this page up right here, and we see this element has a margin of 70 pixels. And there's a green border around it. So this entire thing is a box or an element on the page. And I've got some CSS code. Don't get intimidated. You don't have to do CSS code in WordPress. This is just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to try changing this margin to 150 pixels. And I'll click Run. Now you'll say, wait a minute, what just happened? Well, we created some blank space on both sides of the element to push it out from the center. Now, what is padding? Because that's blank space too. Well, margin is space outside of the element. Padding is actually space inside of the element before the text begins. So if I add a padding with 150 pixels and click Run, you can see our text just got really crunched because we have 150 pixels of space to the edge of our element, and the edge of our element has 150 pixels of space, which is the margin. So how do we access padding and margin in WPBakery? Well, you probably guessed it, you start by clicking the pencil icon. But sort of like I was talking about earlier, there's different ways to add padding and margin to different elements. You could add it to your row, your column, your inner row, your actual element, and they're all gonna have a slightly different effect on what happens. So again, you're gonna have to experiment and go through some trial and error. Here's the settings on a row. All you need to do in Salient is scroll down on General until you see Spacing and Transform. And we can see right now, left has 8% padding and right has 8% padding, and there's no margin. So you can increase this number, decrease it. You can choose to unlink these with the lock icon if you want, so you're just changing one side. And again, there's a lot of experimenting you're going to be doing. That's why I do typically prefer to just import page demos, because then I have a base for what looks good and I can modify it to my liking instead of trying to come up with all of this from scratch. But you certainly can come up with page layouts from scratch. I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. But before we do that, I want to show you something important that you'll want to know before you start making a whole bunch of changes to your website. So here's the thing about using the WordPress editor. As you make changes to your website and you click that update button, you're actually pushing that page out to the live internet. Now, before you've launched your website and nobody knows your domain name, this is not really a big deal. But as you're making all these changes and constantly clicking that update button and loading that page in a new tab, you're literally updating the live page on the internet that anyone can access. And when your website's brand new and no one knows your domain name and no one knows about your site, this is fine. This is no big deal. But what happens after your website is live? Well, if your website is live and people are actively visiting it, they would see all those edits as you push them out in real time. They see this weird half-finished work in progress page, and we really don't want that to happen on a live website. And the best way to prevent this is by using what's called a staging environment. So a staging environment is actually a feature of web hosting. And I'm here in the WP Engine dashboard, which is my web hosting of choice, and they have a really easy way to set up a staging environment. If you'd like to use WP Engine on your website, don't forget that you can get 20% off all plans using promo code CraylorMade20. In WP Engine, it is super simple to set up a staging environment. All I have to do is go over on the sidebar here, click Add Staging, and I'm going to be copying our existing website for the staging environment. So I'll say copy an existing environment to this site. Environment to copy is going to be the production version of my website. And yeah, this current backup is fine. Technically, this is going to be a little bit outdated because I've made some changes since then. So you might want to make a brand new backup before doing this. But for the sake of keeping this simple, yes, this backup is fine to copy for our staging environment. I'll click Next. It's going to suggest a temporary subdomain. This is fine. You can change it if you want. I'm just going to leave this default and click Add Environment. So WP Engine is cloning our existing WordPress website to a temporary install of WordPress on the subdomain we were just assigned. And what that means is we can actually go to that temporary WordPress installation, make our changes there. Nobody's going to see them because that's a domain that nobody knows. And then when it's ready, we can actually push the website from staging to the live site on production, and it's like this beautiful magical site refresh. Now what I'd like to do is show you a little bit of building a page from scratch using WPBakery. I'd really like to solidify some of the things we've talked about in the video and show you how you can create your own elements and layouts from the ground up. To get started, I'm going to go to the Pages option on the sidebar and click Add New. And as soon as this loads, we need to click this backend editor button. Boom, that takes us right to the WPBakery page builder. I'll give our page a title, brand new page, and then I will start by adding an element. You always are going to want to start with a row when you're building a new layout. So I'm going to add this row. Then in our column, I'm going to click this plus button and I'm going to add another row. What I've done is created an inner row. That's something that we talked about earlier, and that just gives me a little bit more flexibility with the layout if I choose to move things around or change it down the road. I'm going to click this plus button in our inner row, and I'm going to choose this split line heading element. I'll just say my amazing new page and click Save Changes. And now I'm going to click this preview button, and that's going to allow us to see what we've done to our page so far. And as you can see, it's looking very basic, but we do have our heading and we have a blank page. So I think we can work with this. One thing I'd like to do is add a background image to our header, so that way we don't have a completely white page that looks extremely uninteresting. I'm going to scroll down and under page header settings, image background, I will just click upload on this page header. I'll pick something that's already uploaded just for simplicity. Select image, and you guessed it, we're going to click this preview button, and that's going to refresh the page. And look at that, it's already looking more interesting. Now we have something other than the white in this header section. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get an interesting element on the page, not just a bunch of text. I'm going to click this plus button and see what our options are, and maybe I'll try a portfolio. We have some portfolio items that are already imported from the demo. I'll just click save and I'll preview this and see how this looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't really like how this wraps. It kind of bugs my OCD, you know, having this 5th item down here. I think I'd like it to stop at 4 items. So I wonder if there's something in the pencil icon for portfolio that would help us do that. I think if we enable pagination, and let's just say 4 projects per page, save those changes, preview that, let our preview refresh, and look at that. Now we just have 4 projects, but we can click over to the next page and see the additional projects if we'd like. All right, I like how this page is coming along, but there's one thing that's kind of bothering me. I feel like this heading is really close to this line here between the image and where the white starts. And as I was talking about earlier, padding and margin are really important to a design looking clean and professional. And right now, I just really think this could use more spacing. And that's no problem. I'm actually going to add some margin to our column because that's what's containing both of these items. It's going to push everything down on the page. And right here, let's just say a margin of 4% for the top. And let's preview and let's see what that looks like. And wow, that already looks so much better having that extra space right there. Now I'd like to add another inner row to this existing outer row we have. So I'm going to add a row, and I'm going to do something interesting and make this a split inner row. We'll do the 1/2 plus 1/2 configuration. So we have our main row here, and then we have our inner row that's split into 2 sections. Maybe on this left side, I'll try adding an image, just something basic. I'll select something that's already imported in our library. I think this image will work right here. And then for the right side, I'll add an interesting heading element. I like the highlighted text element. I'll say we design quality architecture. And one thing I know right off the bat is I want this to be big like a heading. Right now it's set to paragraph, so I'm just gonna highlight all of this, set this to heading, and then since this is the highlighted text control, whatever we want to be highlighted, we actually have to italicize. It actually tells us that right here. So I'd like quality to be highlighted because we're really emphasizing that word. I'll go ahead and italicize that. I'll save these changes. And I'll preview just to see where we're at. Scroll down. And just like that, we have the full-size image on this side. We design quality architecture over here. And you can sort of visualize that inner row, the 2 split settings we have here. And one thing that I'd like to point out, just to really help you understand the row system and why we might make the choices that we made, is that if we want all of these things to be grouped together, we might choose to change the background color on the outer row right here. And just to show you what I mean, let me change this to something like really obvious, just so you see what I'm talking about here. I've made it a really bright yellow, and you can see really what that outer row does. This is all in that outer row, and right now it's not pushing out all the way to the edge. That's a setting that we can modify within Salient. You can also see that our portfolio items actually do have a white background color, so that's why it looks the way it does. But if we wanted to have a big background image that spanned across all of these elements, we could all put them within that row. But if I didn't want the yellow to apply to these elements, or I wanted that to be in a separate section, I could actually create another outer row, or just row, and then drag this inner row to that row, which does not have a yellow background color. And then as we update our preview, you can see the yellow ends here because this is actually an entirely new row. So hopefully that gives you a really clear understanding of the row system and of all the options that we have in WPBakery. Like I said earlier, there are so many different options and ways to customize your website with WPBakery, and it really is a game of trial and error. Remember that if you want to win in WordPress, you have to be willing to experiment. You have to get your hands dirty and just play around with the different options, and it's really not difficult to do. Once you understand that everything starts with clicking the pencil icon, and once you get the basics like how rows work and what padding and margin are, everything else starts to fall into place as you poke around and experiment with different elements and controls. Now that we have a good understanding at building pages with WPBakery, I want to shift our focus to a few things that we need to modify to get our website ready to launch. I'm going to go over to the salient settings panel right here, and this is where we can change things such as fonts, colors, and the logo for the entire website. On the general settings panel, you can see things like button styling, theme skin, overall background color. But I'd like to start by going to the typography screen, and here's where we can set the fonts for the entire website. This is really cool because we don't have to bother with changing fonts for specific elements, though we had that option if we really want to do that. This is a way that we can just set up a brand font for the entire website, change it in one place, and it updates everywhere. By default, Salient pulls in all the options from Google Fonts, and I mean, just go to this dropdown, you can see how many options there are to pick from. Google Fonts are great to use on your website. They load super fast, and you have a lot of different options to pick. You can adjust font size, line height, font weight, just all sorts of options to get things exactly how you want it for your branding. We can also adjust our global colors for website elements under the accent colors menu. Right now our main accent color is red and our extra color is this blue color. But if I change this here and I update it, then that accent color is going to change throughout the entire website. And I can have buttons mapped to all 4 of these accent colors. So if I've got like a primary button color and a secondary button color, and I want to change that at some point as my brand gets updated, I can come in here, I can change the color, save my changes, and then every button or element on the site that was pulling from this accent color is immediately going to update to reflect the new color that we just set. And finally, I want to add our logo to the header section of our website. To do this, I'm going to go over to header navigation and check use image for logo. Then I'm going to upload my logo and select this. You can also play with the logo height. I know based off of using Salient before that I'm going to want my logo a little bit bigger, so I'm going to put 45 here. The default is 30. I'll save my changes, and then I will go and preview the website. And boom, our logo is now in our header. And since we just switched out our logo and we're already thinking about the header section, why don't we go ahead and look at how to customize this further. I'm gonna go back to the Salient settings, and I'm still under header navigation. And there's a lot we can do here to change the layout and different aspects. I think the primary thing that we'd want to do is go to layout and content related, and we can change where the logo is placed, where menu items are placed. Is it a full width header? We can really change anything we want about the header styling in this section here. It's important to note that Salient does not actually have a header builder. You actually have to modify all the header settings in this dashboard right here. And if you're wondering where Salient is actually pulling the menu options from, that comes from a native WordPress option. That's under Appearance and Menus. And this is where we can actually decide what is on the menus. Now, an important thing when you're working with WordPress is to make sure you're editing the right menu. There's a drop down here with the theme, and we have the main menu, the top menu. I know the main menu is what I'm trying to edit, but right here we can actually adjust what is on the menu. So I'm just gonna delete demos. I don't want that on my menu. I'll save changes. So as you can see under our menu, we've removed the demos section. And one thing I'd like to do now is get a more traditional menu on the menu bar and get rid of this whole hidden menu thing. And the best way to do that is go to our Salient settings and go to off canvas menu. That's what that feature is actually called. I'm gonna switch this to off and save the changes. Now I have to remap the WordPress menu to make sure it goes in the proper place. So after I've turned this off, I'm gonna go back to Appearance and Menus. And under our main menu, you'll see that display location, nothing is checked because we took away the off-canvas menu. So I'll check top navigation menu, save menu. And now, when I go back to our website and refresh the page, you can see we have a more traditional menu. And here's what some of the different layouts look like that we can select in the header layout menu. And as you can see, there are so many options to create any style of menu we could possibly think of. After you've customized your header, you're gonna wanna customize your footer. And Salient actually has multiple ways of doing this depending on the page demo that you've imported. If you're using a newer theme demo like this architect one, they're gonna use the newer method for editing footers, which in my opinion is far better than the old method, but I'm gonna touch on both to give you a clear picture of how to edit footers in Salient. I'm gonna start in the Salient settings menu, and I'm gonna go over to global sections. And this is the new way that Salient handles footers. You can actually assign what's called a global section to be displayed after page content. And this is basically a custom footer that's built in WPBakery. So we have architect footer selected, and we can actually edit architect footer under global sections and global sections. And then architect footer, I will edit this. And you can see that everything lines up. This is our footer. So exactly how you would edit a page in WPBakery, you can edit your footer section, make your changes, and then Salient is just automatically going to put that section after every page as your footer. So that is the newer way of doing footers in Salient. The old way is to go to the Salient menu and go to footer, and make changes here sort of like we just did with the header. You can play around with the checkboxes and customize things this way, and a lot of the way that this would work is by toggling this main footer area and deciding how many columns you want your footer to be. I'm gonna say 3 columns, save changes. And then when you do this, it's very similar to the header, how we had to go to the menu section within WordPress. Using the old footer system, we actually have to go to Appearance and Widgets. And then we have footer widgets that we can put things into to customize our footer. So we have footer area 1, 2, and 3. I'm just gonna make a paragraph, area 1, area 2, and area 3. Update this, go back to our website and refresh the page. And now you can see that we actually have 2 footers. I'm not sure what happened to area 1. It's probably a setting somewhere, but the reason we have 2 footers is that this is that original old school footer using the widgets section of WordPress. It's less customizable, less flexible, and then we have that global section, that new way of doing a footer that allows us to build it using WPBakery. So you're gonna see different things based on the theme demo that you import. I definitely recommend trying a newer theme demo because that's going to give you the most updated methods within the theme. I really like using global sections to make a footer, but that gives you an idea at both ways that you could customize your footer in Salient. So at the end of the day, building a WordPress website is all about experimenting and looking through settings menus. It's really not rocket science. And one thing you'll notice is that in this entire video, we never once got into CSS, HTML, or having to code anything for our website. A lot of people can be scared of WordPress because they think they have to be super tech savvy to get it to work. But as you can see, it's literally just clicking buttons, checkboxes, and drop downs. And as long as you invest time to looking through the settings menus and reading documentation, you can get a wonderful looking website. Remember that you can always reach out for help at craylor.co/discord. Join the free Discord community. I'd be happy to help. Other members of the community are happy to help. And you can also reach out to the Salient developer. So that's editing and building pages in WPBakery. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss part 3 of Craylor Academy, where you'll learn how to optimize your site's SEO, set up my preferred plugins, and keep your website maintained for years to come. Special thanks to WP Engine for supporting the channel, and remember that you can get 20% off WP Engine plans using promo code CraylorMade20.